Alberta, the strongest economy in Canada, a province with the most exciting opportunities in the world today. The reason is its vast energy resources. For more than 50 years, the energy industry has been commercially developing one of the largest petroleum reserves on the planet, the Alberta Oil Sands, a proven reserve of oil so large it is second only to Saudi Arabia's. Production rates from the oil sands already exceed 1 million barrels a day. By 2018, new and expanded projects are forecast to increase production to over 3 million barrels a day. Athabasca, Cold Lake, Peace River. These deposits represent approximately 170 billion barrels of established reserves. With ongoing technology advances, the recoverable reserves will become even greater. Alberta has a vision for a dynamic future. Opportunity is here and now. Alberta's abundant energy resources will be developed into refined petroleum products and chemicals right here in the province. Alberta's environment will be safeguarded for future generations, and the development of advanced technologies and best practices will be encouraged. Alberta's communities will be involved in creating a sustainable future. This is the story of Alberta's vision and the world of opportunity it is creating. What appears to be a medical CT scanner actually is, but this is no hospital. The Alberta Research Council is one of the province's leading petroleum research facilities. This sophisticated analytical tool is used to gaze deep inside oil sands experiments. The knowledge gained from applying expertise to advanced studies like this is leading to more economical and more environmentally friendly oil sands recovery techniques. Less than 100 years ago, this resource was considered inaccessible and unusable. But times have changed. Alberta's oil sands now have an important role to play in the world's hydrocarbon future. The oil found in the oil sands is in the form of bitumen. But getting it out of the ground and turning it into a usable form of energy isn't easy. Depending on the location, it may lie below swamps, mixed amongst sand, or encased inside rock formations. Despite challenging terrain and reservoir conditions, Alberta has created the solutions. Many of the technologies that have been developed to extract the resource in Alberta can be applied to reservoirs around the world. For bitumen located less than 75 meters from the surface, mining has proven to be the most effective method of recovery. Some of the largest moving vehicles on the planet are found at these northern Alberta oil sands mining sites. 400 tons per load, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Even at this astonishing rate, they're barely scratching the surface. Only 20% of the established reserves in the oil sands can be recovered through surface mining processes. Producing the larger, much deeper reserves has required ingenuity and many years of focused research and development. To meet the world's increasing demand for heavy oil, Alberta utilizes a variety of in situ recovery technologies. In situ, meaning in place, refers to processes for recovering the bitumen deep underground. In most cases, it must be heated to a liquid state and then pumped to the surface. In the northern part of the province is a showpiece of Alberta-born in situ technology, SAGD. Steam-assisted gravity drainage is the thermal technology that literally unlocked in situ oil sands development. Effective in a broad range of geological situations, SAGD has been the predominant in situ technology used in the province. SAGD utilizes two parallel horizontal wells placed near the bottom of a reservoir. The upper well injects steam to heat the bitumen, allowing it to flow to the bottom well, where it is pumped to the surface and sent for processing. This Alberta operation is the first to integrate SAGD with an on-site upgrader, a facility that converts the bitumen to its next stage of quality refinement. What makes this operation truly unique is its application of an integrated upgrading process that includes gasification. Gasification separates the heaviest component of the bitumen and converts it into a clean synthesis gas. This gas is used to generate steam for the extraction process. It also provides hydrogen for upgrading the bitumen to a premium quality synthetic crude oil. By integrating the extraction, upgrading, gasification, and infrastructure facilities, less energy is consumed, while producing higher valued products and conserving resources. Near the eastern border of Alberta, an in situ technique has been custom-made to deal with the region's heavy oil reserves. CHOPS, or cold heavy oil production with sand, closely resembles a conventional oil well. This process also recovers sand, which makes the oil flow much more easily. Powerful pumps pull material through a vertically drilled well. The process reaches out great distances below the surface to access the reservoir. CHOPS is a simple, effective technique with a reduced environmental footprint. It makes this an attractive solution for similar heavy oil reservoirs around the world. Several of Alberta's in situ technologies rely on water for steam generation. Most operations are recycling up to 90% of their water intake. The advancement of water recycling technologies is a key component of Alberta's vision for the environment. This in situ oil sands operation in Alberta's Cold Lake region is using a process called CSS, cyclic steam stimulation. CSS injects steam down the well at high pressure and temperature. After a soak phase, the well begins to produce a mixture of bitumen, water, and gases that are piped to a central plant for processing. This simulation represents one of Alberta's latest pilot recovery techniques. It's a process called tie. Short for toe-to-heel air injection, the process preheats the bitumen with steam and then injects air into the vertical well to cause a combustion reaction. The high temperature causes the bitumen to flow from the toe of the horizontal producing well to its heel. It's extremely efficient, using much less water and natural gas, and results in an oil ready for the pipeline. The success of these oil sands recovery techniques has created employment for thousands and opened up huge opportunities in many supporting trades and industries. But to be clear, this is more than just an opportunity for Alberta. Companies from around the world are providing goods and services for oil sands development or coming here to learn from the expertise that has been developed. Beyond the world of oil sands recovery, even more exciting opportunities are waiting. Alberta has worked with industry to prove that processing heavy oil into higher value products right here in the province is both technically and economically feasible. To accomplish this, a large portion of the resource extracted from the oil sands regions is moved south on an expanding network of underground pipelines. The destination is a region of concentrated supporting industries near Edmonton, the province's capital city. It's an area primed for meeting the demands of upgrading and refining the heavy oil and oil sands bitumen into much higher value finished products. This is Alberta's industrial heartland. Here, prosperity and efficiency are encouraged through industrial integration, a sharing of resources and infrastructure designed to produce refined fuels and chemicals for global markets. Integration allows for one company's waste to become another's feedstock, and where technologies and best practices are encouraged to enhance operational efficiencies. This significantly reduces the overall environmental footprint and improves a project's return on investment. Once extracted, the heavy oil and bitumen is processed at an upgrader like this one. The upgraders will transform this heavy product into a synthetic crude oil similar to light conventional oil. Alberta has 5 bitumen upgraders processing over 1 million barrels per day. Additional upgrading investments are being announced that could lead to capacity doubling over the next 10 to 15 years. The equipment and service demands to sustain these facilities over their 30 to 50-year lifespan could represent upwards of $100 billion in business opportunities. Local and international companies of all types are invited to participate in this tremendous growth. From the upgraders, the synthetic crude oil makes its way to the refineries. Here, a variety of processing techniques transform it into a series of consumer petroleum products like diesel, gasoline, aviation fuel, kerosene, and fuel oil. But the products derived from the oil sands are not always so obvious. This petrochemical plant creates plastic beads from natural gas-based ethane. The beads are sold to manufacturers that will convert them into a wide range of everyday plastic products. Alberta's petrochemical industry is looking at the rich natural gas liquids found in the upgrader off-gases as a new feedstock. This opportunity meets the objectives of government to maximize the value of our oil sands resource by moving up the value chain to produce products for global markets. The environment is a high priority in Alberta. A variety of measures ensure it is protected for future generations. Edmonton's wastewater treatment plant is using state-of-the-art techniques to turn its treated wastewater into a high industrial grade. Each day, as much as 15 million liters can be piped for use at a nearby refinery. Facilities like this will continue to help reduce industry demands on local freshwater supplies. Alberta also recognizes the importance of maintaining healthy air quality. Ambient air quality is monitored at several locations in the Athabasca deposit region.
Yeah, sulfurs are fine, hydrocarbons are fine.
The area consistently receives top air quality ratings.
Ammonia is fine.
While the oil sands account for less than 0.1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, Alberta is leading in action on climate change. The province was the first jurisdiction in North America to enact climate change legislation and set a price on carbon. Carbon capture and storage is a critical element of Alberta's climate change plan and will play a role in managing oil sands-related GHG emissions. And the government has committed $2 billion towards the development of a number of large-scale CCS demonstration projects. From Alberta, it's on to the world. Pipelines, highways, and railways transport the oil sands products to global markets. It's estimated that every dollar invested in the oil sands generates over $8 in direct or indirect economic activity. This has a positive impact and generates tremendous opportunity across all sectors of the economy. With production rates expected to expand over the next few years, the province will continue to experience strong economic growth. Alberta is ready and is managing this growth responsibly. By working closely with industries and communities, strategies are being developed to provide a sufficient labor force, to care for the environment, and to create the necessary infrastructure required to take full advantage of the oil sands potential. The world is looking for a safe, secure, and stable supply of energy resources. Alberta is poised to fill that need responsibly. The opportunities here are immense. The time is now to participate in Alberta's astonishing growth.
The first 25 years of oil sand development has been about trying to produce a resource and make it competitive in world markets. The next 25 years is going to be about trying to make that resource a lot more sustainable in its development.
There is a growing environmental movement, not only within Alberta, but internationally, that are interested specifically in oil sands development. And I actually welcome that because I myself feel quite affiliated with them. I do work for the department. I'm very passionate about protecting our air, land, and water.
Is there room for improvement? Do we need critiques by people throughout Canada and the world? Yes, of course. That's what keeps us on our toes. It's what keeps us constantly reevaluating and looking for better ways of doing our business. I think it's because Albertans are so ready to take the stage, you know, and say, here's our plan, throw rocks at us if you will, it's only going to make us better, is what makes us better.
50% of our oil in Canada is produced from oil sands, and that's going to grow in the future. We think in about 10 years it will be about 75% of Canada's oil production, and a large part of our exports will be oil sands derived crude.
Cumulatively, we know that we're going to see, say, 3 million barrels of oil sands production. So what does that look like for the carrying capacity of the ecosystem and setting the thresholds to say, okay, we can only manage this much air pollution in this region and capping the air pollution so that we maintain good air quality, capping the amount of fresh water that can be used so that we have a sustained and healthy ecosystem, river system for now and in the future.
I fly over the oil sands all the time. I do a lot of water quality sampling up there. Part of the reason it's so surprising, so shocking, is because it's sort of like you come over this green expanse with very little disturbance in it, and there it is. And it looks massive, and it looks out of place. That said, the total footprint for mines themselves, which look so drastic, is actually small. 1% of Alberta's forested area.
As far as reserves are concerned, which is the part of the resource that you can produce, they're second only to Saudi Arabia. We're talking about the oil sands, the entire oil sands resource being the size of Florida, but in fact only a very small proportion of that oil sand is being dug up for surface mining. 80% of the resource actually is deeply buried. That part of the resource can be produced using very different methods than having to surface mine it. Steam-assisted gravity drainage is a process by which steam is injected into the reservoir to melt the bitumen to the point where it can be pumped to the surface. The main advantage of in-situ production is that the wells are drilled from a single pad, and it's possible from the surface to drill wells that can extend several kilometers in the underground to develop that resource.
The environmental impacts of steam-assisted gravity drainage, of course, are much easier to mitigate, to manage, because the level of disturbance is much smaller. You're not scraping off all the surface soils. You're never fully disrupting those soil processes that you have to reestablish at a mine site basically from scratch.
Virtually no more water will be used out of the Athabasca River because most of the Sagadi water will be treated and reused.
Now, are the impacts real from Sagadi? I don't want to minimize the impacts that can occur from vast networks of pipelines. There is an impact from that, particularly to wildlife. You have to manage those. What limitations do you need to put on the amount of, say, linear disturbance and roads so that you can have a minimized impact on those sensitive species such as caribou? Reclamation is what makes oil sands mining and development possible. We couldn't just extract oil sands and then leave a barren landscape afterwards. It wouldn't be acceptable to Albertans.
Reclamation simply is the returning of that land to an equivalent land capability.
It's not just about putting the soil back, it's about putting the soil back, contouring the land, it's about revegetation, it's about perhaps putting in wetlands if wetlands were there before. There's always active reclamation going on as the mine develops and as it moves forward.
Reclamation is indeed occurring. I think over 65 square kilometers are under reclamation now.
This takes time. This is a 30 to 40 year game plan, and that's why we have just issued our first reclamation certificate on a 104 hectare site.
You want to ensure that the piece of reclaimed landscape that you're certifying is indeed a self-sustaining forested ecosystem that will not require any ongoing maintenance. And that takes time.
Well, a tailings pond is part of the mining process. When you heat up the bitumen, you produce a slurry that contains water, a little bit of bitumen, and a lot of sand because bitumen is contained in sand. And it's put into a tailings pond, which is really a dam-like structure. What we have around the tailings ponds is a groundwater monitoring system and then a capture system so that if anything leaks, it actually gets caught in this capture system and is re-injected back into the tailings ponds itself.
You want an immediate detection. Just like any city landfill, you'll put your monitoring system right next to that landfill or right next to the pond, and you'll want to detect that leachate right away so that you can remediate it quickly.
What does end up happening over time is that as the tailings consolidate, they become an almost impermeable layer of very fine clay. So the seepage rates decline over time.
We have our first tailing ponds that will be reclaimed by 2010. It won't be fully treed or anything like that, but there will be topsoil and a layer of vegetation that'll be placed on top of it. We do extensive water quality monitoring of the Athabasca River. We take thousands and thousands of water samples. We've been monitoring since the early 1960s, and so far we've not been able to find any impact from the tailings ponds itself.
Perceptually, when you look at the short historical record, flows in the Athabasca are very low currently, or have been very low. Now, is that a concern? Alberta Environment, along with Department of Fisheries and Oceans, put into place a water management framework for the Athabasca River, which alleviates that concern. It does so by setting strict limits on how much water can be taken from the Athabasca River on a weekly basis.
The allocations are approximately 3% of the annual flow of the Athabasca River. Now, not all that 3% is actually taken. It's what's allocated, but the companies that are withdrawing are not actually withdrawing their full volumes. Most areas of the world do this when they're in trouble, when they have no more water to give, or their water quality is degraded to the point that their ecosystems are being degraded. And Alberta has chosen to say, we want to keep our water clean and abundant, and therefore we come out with these management frameworks in a very proactive manner.
This was predicated on what is really unique in the international community for the amount of money and time spent on collecting data, millions of dollars spent on it. We brought in scientists from around the world. So really, we created a water management framework that is state-of-the-art.
Companies have moved a long way to reduce their freshwater use. I'm talking about from 80% freshwater use to now 3 to 4 to 5% in steam-assisted gravity drainage operations.
In Alberta, we summarize air quality through what we call the Air Quality Index. We measure 5 air quality pollutants, and then we wrap that up into a number, and we have a standard that we like to see. So over the last 10 or 15 years, the air quality has been rated good 98% of the time. The air quality actually hasn't gotten worse in Fort McMurray because of the stringent standards that we have in place.
Because of the heavy industrial development in that particular region, there is air quality monitoring going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's actually been very vital to show us what is happening with specific air quality contaminants. Overall, the air quality is very good. That is backed by the monitoring that has occurred for decades.
When you put into context the oil sands contribution, I think there's a perception out there that it is, for example, the largest industrial footprint on the planet. What we're talking about right now is an industrial activity that's about 0.1% of global emissions.
Greenhouse gas emissions, it is a global issue. CO2 doesn't respect any jurisdictions or boundaries, but we all have to make a difference. We all can make a difference in reducing those emissions. So Alberta is focused on areas where we can make the most difference. There are technologies that we're developing and trying to implement that can look at capturing CO2 from those large industry point sources, ultimately purify those CO2 emissions, and then those emissions would then be transported and ultimately injected into geologic formations where they can be stored for extremely long periods of time, geological time essentially. We're talking about storing CO2 very deep, about 1,000 meters below the surface. The most critical time to monitor is actually during the injection phase. That's when most of the monitoring technologies will be deployed, but we'll have longer-term monitoring as well.
Alberta has stepped up by committing $2 billion to 3 to 5 commercial-size carbon capture and storage projects.
Our experts in Alberta are recognized as international experts, and they're in high demand around the world. We've been working not just at the Alberta Research Council, but Canadian universities, Alberta universities, working on projects in Australia, in China, in the United States.
I don't know if anywhere else in the world where these kinds of ideas could be managed as well as it's It's here, especially because we have the resource, but also the people resource have been developed here.
I think Albertans themselves are very much solutions-oriented, and they see possibilities. And that inherently drives innovation, and it really drives solutions.
All of my work has been done in northern Alberta on Alberta lakes and rivers. So I was a beneficiary. I've seen it firsthand. It's touched me. It's formed my professional career, is the attitude that Albertans have towards the environment and the resources they're willing to put towards it.